look at the big trends in e-commerce logistics with my guest today, Vijay Ramachandran. He is VP of Go-to-Market Enablement and Experience with Pitney Bowes. Hello, Vijay.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And thank you for being with me. Let's hit the high notes on this. There's a lot to talk about.
There is.
How is the overall microeconomic climate affecting consumers' online shopping behaviors right now?
Now, Bob, if I were to tell you that consumers are spending more in a down economy, would you believe me? Because that is exactly what's happening with online sales.
I would be very surprised to hear you say that.
Very surprised.
Yes.
In fact, two trends are happening. One is that online spending is increasing. It's about 6 to 7% higher than last year. And before we say that's inflation related, Adobe just announced today, this morning, that online prices on average are at a 40-month low. 40-month low, and yet e-commerce sales are up 6 to 7% year over year. How is that? That's because consumers are spending more. How could that be during a down economy? And what we found is that COVID habits are really sticking in terms of the preference for online shopping. Sure, there was a blip there where the novelty of going back to the store as economies opened up, as lockdowns released, that was normal. But what we're seeing now is a staying trend where consumers are preferring to shop online, especially as things like theft and labor shortages in retail stores really denigrate that in-store experience.
Oh, very interesting. That is not what I thought you were going to say.
Right.
Okay, so obviously this means some kind of a shift, means something for delivery expectations. We know how demanding consumers were during the pandemic. What are their expectations today?
So I'm going to look at two stats to give you an idea of where expectations are changing. The first stat is look at travel. The US government tracks how often, how much we're traveling. We are now 100% back to where things were in 2019. 100%. In fact, our vehicle miles traveled is even higher now than it was in 2019 before the pandemic. If you look at the second stat, office foot traffic is now still below 50% of where it was before the pandemic struck. So we're traveling as much as we were before the pandemic, but we're not going into the office. Bob, where the hell are we going?
I guess we're going to places like this.
It's
right?
Places that don't give you a set schedule, like the job did, the office did, 9 to 5, 5 days a week. We don't have that set schedule anymore. And what that means is that our expectations are less about I need delivery now, and more about I want the certainty to know that I'm going to be home when the delivery takes place. It's a fundamental shift in expectations because we may not be home. You and I are here in Nashville at this event. If we have a package delivered home now, there's a good chance it could be gone by the time we get back.
For sure.
And so given that, I want to have the certainty as a consumer that it gets delivered when I'm going to be home, when I expect to be home. And my schedule is not set every single week. It's not consistent every week. And so it's really the job of the consumer to keep track of when am I ordering and when does the merchant, the retailer say it's going to get delivered. And that's a heavy burden on the consumer, especially if delivery timeframes are quoted in increments of business days that are quoted in 5 to 7 business days, in very, very oblique terms, just because the merchant is trying to avoid calls to the call center. What that's actually going to result in is a degradation of conversions at checkout. So if we can provide consumers not with the fastest possible shipping option, but with the certainty, the credibility to say, the confidence to say, here's when to expect the packages, even if it's a range, it's better than just putting the number of days out there.
And not just here's the date on which to expect the package, but here is the progress of the package on its way to you. Here's each stage, and especially on the last day, here's how many blocks away the package is. Isn't that also very important to consumers today?
It is a bit. When you're tracking multiple packages, having to see multiple delivery drivers converge on your home, not particularly informative. I would argue that that's really better for restaurant delivery when you have a whole family eagerly salivating over their dinner.
Right.
You have hungry kids at home. That makes sense to go track the package step to step. But if you have 4 or 5 packages arriving in a two-day span, you're probably not checking the delivery driver status unless there's signature required or something really high value being delivered that could get stolen. What you're really more expecting, we know from our studies, our own proprietary research, that consumers are tracking about 3 times every order, and for Gen Z, it's about 4.5 times every order. Now, what you need to do, it's not that consumers need to know minute by minute progress. What we found is that if you can just give them an updated delivery date and a time window, they're going to check less often. In fact, the likelihood of them calling customer service because they're not sure about the delivery date decreases by half. And so it's a tremendous savings in terms of call center volumes if you can just simply provide an updated delivery date and or a time window. So I think that's the most important. The second thing is, given that you've got 3 visits to every tracking page on average for a given order, that's valuable marketing real estate. That is an opportunity, a captive audience. Now, most brands, they set this page up and they haven't looked at that tracking page in probably months or years. And so what you find is that most of those tracking pages have a very static ad that says, come check out our new arrivals or items on sale, which is kind of value destructive, experience destructive for the consumer. Why? Because they just purchased something on your website days ago. Why drive them back to go look at new arrivals? They simply just shopped new arrivals. And so instead, what you should offer is options to drop off in a different location, options to find accessories to the product you just purchased, options to convert the purchase into a subscription. Those are relevant choices that respect the consumer's time. Because again, going back to our earlier point, consumers are more worried about time, managing their own time, because they don't have a set schedule like they did before the pandemic.
Sometimes the tracking page you go to isn't the tracking page of the retailer or the brand, it's the carrier, the parcel carrier, in which they're not going to have any messages for you there about the brand.
It's so important to have a branded tracking experience with real-time information embedded, because what you often find, I actually gave this as an example at a session I spoke at earlier today, if you get a notification from a carrier, what often happens if it's being shipped by a 3PL is that the carrier doesn't even know the name of the merchant shipping. And so what as a consumer end up getting from a UPS or a FedEx is, you have a delivery coming from fulfillment center at some point today. Now, if I'm waiting on 3 or 4 packages, having a tracking message that says, your delivery from fulfillment center is coming today is absolutely useless to me.
You don't know which one.
I have no idea which one. And so given that, having your own tracking experience, it still has the data from the carrier embedded, but it's on your own look and feel, your own logo, gives the consumer a level of trust that you have control over that delivery experience and not the carrier.
Okay, we've established then that there is no single standard of expectation of speed. How then do retailers manage multiple speeds of deliveries to the customer?
It's a great point. So one of the key parts of looking at your delivery speeds is asking yourself how much you can regionalize that inventory. On Amazon's last earnings call, Andy Jassy said that over 70% of Amazon's orders are now regionalized, meaning that they've, at their scale, pushed all of their inventory and anticipated where the demand's going to come from for 70% of consumer transactions. That's a tremendous number. Everybody else in the industry is sort of catching up. If you have a store network, you probably have done this to some degree, but if you're marking down a lot of products, you're probably not doing it very efficiently. For e-commerce, it's even more expensive given the high cost of labor and fulfillment. And so you have to, if you can position your inventory closer to the customer, you can get a lot more specific on that delivery date. You can be a lot more consistent in predicting it. If you don't have that ability, get your carrier, get your 3PL to do more work in analyzing historical data. These are services that a carrier or 3PL should be willing to offer you at no additional fee. Just because it helps ensure the value of their own service. It ingrains you better as a partner of a merchant. And if they don't offer that, it may be time to look for a new partner.
Well, the infrastructure is making it more possible these days with smaller distribution centers, micro fulfillment centers, things closer to the customer makes it easier to manage then, right?
It is true. Now, what we have seen is as free shipping thresholds, the amount you have to purchase to qualify for free shipping, as that goes up, what we're finding is that a lot of retailers are seeing larger packages or having to split orders across multiple DCs. And a lot of these larger retailers are now consolidating some of their facilities. So it's not as local as micro as it once was. It's more regional than micro, more regional than metro is the trend.
Well, thank you so much, Vijay, for outlining some really interesting trends we're seeing in what's going on in e-commerce logistics. I would like to take a moment, though, to ask you about what products and services Pitney Bowes specifically is offering the marketplace to address these changes.
Absolutely, happy to ask. So our go-to-market, our value proposition in the market is that we design logistics services around the needs of each individual client. And so what we've done is we've built modular service capabilities in fulfillment, delivery, returns, and international shipping. And what we can do is put the pieces together that make sense for your individual brand based on the market research we've done, the investigation we've done of your company, the customer experience you're offering, and even we do a complementary analysis of your competitors to look at where do you improve that experience and how can we build a service around you that can support the goals of outdoing your competitors on customer experience.
Again, Vijay, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me, outlining these big trends in e-commerce logistics and telling me a little bit about Pitney Bowes as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Bob. Appreciate it.
And speaking with Vijay Ramachandran of Pitney Bowes. Thank you very much for watching.